Welcome back to Sustainability Forward, our podcast. I'm your host, Rishi, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Carmine. It's been an incredible year for our podcast, and today our plan is to take you through a journey of all the conversations we've had. Carmine, are you ready for this year's flashback? And more importantly, how are you doing?
Thank you, Rishi. Yes, end of the year, very excited. It's been a year filled with insightful discussions, inspiring stories, and I can't wait to revisit them. So let's drive right and relive the moments that made this year so special.
Exactly. Let's maybe start for our audience with the numbers. Over the past year, we recorded 16 episodes featuring 13 incredible guests and covering topics ranging from biodiversity to energy transition. And we've seen, thousands of downloads from our listeners across the globe. I think last time we checked, the episodes were being played in around 40 or 50 countries. And it's amazing to see, Carmine, how far we've come, considering it's only been about a year and a half ago that we started this podcast.
Wow. Yes, it's really amazing. And thinking about the variety of the topics, really, eh, it's so great. But let's review it. Let's go back where all it began.
Exactly. I remember back in January, our first episode of the year was the whole topic of understanding what net zero really meant. And we explored the critical balance between greenhouse gas emissions and their removal. We essentially broke down the essence of net zero and discussed its importance for businesses and countries, and we tried to compare and contrast what that meant. That set the stage for the urgent climate action themes that we kept on visiting throughout the year.
Yeah, it was a great episode. It's very relevant for this year when we think that 2024 now it's almost there and probably will be one of the hottest year ever. Definitely the year where on average we were above the 1.5, fatigue equals 1.5 degrees. So extremely important to keep in mind. And from that episode, actually, we dived into decoupling growth and emissions. So we're trying to highlight how countries, for example, like UK or Sweden, are pioneering sustainable economic development. So how is really possible to still grow without growing also emissions parallelly? And this episode provides some inspiring example of transitioning away from fossil fuels without compromising economic ambitions.
Exactly. And like you said, we actually did an episode talking about the 1.5 degree Celsius global
Yes.
warming threshold. And we unpacked some of the historical context of how we got to that number, what that number means, but more importantly, that the potential tipping points if we fail to stay below this critical limit. And like you said, we've already exceeded it once. So it's a stark reminder of the urgency of the collective action we need on our climate goals.
Yes, and then we came to one of our first guest speaker. So we had Preeti Pincha talking about transforming systems for sustainability. And we talk about system-led approaches brought that can bring new perspectives on how corporation and policies must evolve to address climate change challenges effectively.
Yeah, I remember that episode also because at the time we also we added actually Apple Podcasts as one of our channels, along with our traditional channels of Spotify, where we encountered some challenges, but we navigated through them. But after that episode with Preeti, we explored the story of climate finance with Nuno Fernandez, and that was an interesting episode because it was for the first time that we were taking a sort of an academic look at climate finance and his insights on ESG ratings, the role of financial actions in combating climate change, and really gave us a clear roadmap for leveraging finance as a tool for sustainability.
Right. And actually staying on the academia part, one of my personal favorite episodes was The Tragedy of the Commons with Carl Schellmenders, as a professor MD. I really enjoyed that episode. He masterfully explained the economic underpinning of climate change and how market-based solution can address the ultimate market failures. And I still remember how we discussed climate change is one of the, as the mother of all externalities. Very interesting concepts.
Yeah, and probably one of our biggest episodes in terms of downloads and listenership. So I encourage our listeners, if they're interested, to go back to that episode with Carl, which was a very interesting episode. But we did shift gears a little bit uh, and went a little bit technical into what we called a realistic energy transition, featuring Arun Cardoza. Arun obviously has a long background in the energy industry. So Arun provided a breakdown of the energy industry's tailwinds and headwinds and provided a clear view of the challenges and the opportunities in the global energy landscape.
And speaking about energy, there was one very cool episode with Dr. James Crosby Rangley about distributed energy systems. And we offer an in-depth look on how decentralization is reshaping energy supply and decarbonization strategy. We talk a lot about the equilibrium between supply and demand, how new technologies are really influencing this kind of equilibrium and thinking about new solution. And most importantly, we focus on the importance of the grid as a key element for decarbonization.
Yeah, exactly. And that gave us a view into what is distributed infrastructure, what kind of smaller actors could be doing in terms of energy transition. But then midway through the year, we had the opportunity to bring Paul Pereira into one of our episodes, and we focused. I think before he was going, just before he was going to a major conference in China, we looked at the ideas of energy transition in China. And Paul obviously has a background in many things, including hydrogen. And the discussion we had with Paul on hydrogen technology, sustainable aviation, and AI-driven innovations, I think was very futuristic. It kind of gave us a view into what is going on in China, but also it gave us some examples of how the potential actions can be grounded in reality as well.
Yeah. And then we talk about people. We did with Cécile Pompei. We talk about people recruiting in their careers in climate change. And Cécile global perspective on building sustainable workforce and her advice for climate change careers resonated deeply with our listeners. It was a good episode also for thinking about energy transition careers, on other also from other perspectives.
Yeah, and no doubt attracting, retaining talent within this industry is a challenge, just like it is in many other industries, and is probably one of the key levers we have to make sure the sustainability industry keeps progressing. Now, in the summer, we explored summer right around the time we had the Paris Olympics. So we call the episode Summer Paris Olympics and Biodiversity. This was just a discussion between you and I, particularly because you, Carmine, had the opportunity to actually see some of the games at the Olympics, and you were in Paris at the time. But that gave us the opportunity to analyze the environmental impact of global events. And also we looked a little bit into what kind of actions companies are taking, and we did the case study of AstraZeneca and its biodiversity restoration initiatives. It was quite a refreshing way actually to connect with global events vis-a-vis their sustainability targets.
Yes, great episode. Came just after the Paris Olympics. A lot of discussion about how to make these Olympics more and more sustainable. We talk about also the challenges for organizing new Olympic Games in the winter or in summer, or either because you're lacking of snow or because it's too warm. Probably this is a model that has to be rethought about the Olympic Committee. And then we float away. We talk about bees and has a very key element of sustainability. And we did with a friend, with Maurizio Pizzolo, in the episode Honey, Bees, and Bee Voltaic. We shared how bee voltaic combines renewable energy and beekeeping to create innovative solutions for diversity and sustainability. Actually, for me, it was a kind of a discovery to talk about bivoltaic as a subsegment of agrovoltaic. And we discuss some of these applications, especially in these islands in Sardinia, that is at the middle, in the middle of Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't remember exactly if we did the episode with Roberto Bocca before or after, but we certainly did a very important episode with Roberto, who provided his insights from Davos. And he emphasized the importance of equity and global cooperation in driving the energy transition. I think the name of the episode was The Path to an Inclusive and Realistic Energy Transition. Roberto actually gave some interesting insights combining what is happening in China, which resonated with the discussions we had with Paul, but also he gave some interesting targets that countries like India are developing, and the kind of progress that has been made in those countries in terms of energy transition. Certainly was a very, very interesting episode.
Yes. And then we had another great guest from academia. We talked recently with Adrian Deckler around the biodiversity imperative. So we discussed why biodiversity is so important. We discussed some of the breakthroughs from COP16. So this is the Cali COP that happened this year. Just as I remember, we had 3 COPs this year. So we had the one in Cali in Colombia around the biodiversity. We had the one in Baku, so in Azerbaijan, just that was on climate change. And then we had a third one. This is about land diversification. And specifically with Adrian, we discussed the role of digital sequencing information that can provide a roadmap for global biodiversity efforts and how some companies are now leveraging this.
Exactly, and that was a very very important episode, because not only did we learn about the history of the COPs, but also Adrian gave a almost a personal view of what individually people can do about climate change, about biodiversity, sharing some of his experiences as well. Now, finally, we ended the year with actually an episode with a returning guest, Andrew Prague, who was with us last year when he'd gone to COP28, and this year he went to COP29. So he shared the takeaways from those from the recent visit to COP29. Andrew brought his expertise, gave us clarity to the outcomes of COP29, from climate finance related challenges to the future of global climate negotiations. And I remember, Carmine, you asked him a question around the validity of COP going forward as a platform to bring multiple parties onto one platform, and whether that'll continue to remain the same or not. So that was, I think, quite a good reflection, and probably a good way to wrap up our year in terms of all the episodes that we recorded.
Yes, Richie. And something that we learned this year is that sustainability is a collective journey. It requires multilateralism. And as we said with Andrew, probably a word with COP is definitely better than a word without COP. And sustainability is about systems, it's about policies, people, and businesses working together for a better future. Something that happened in 2024 probably has been one of the years where so many parts of the world have been called to elections. So big democracies. In US, we had election, we had the European election in this part of the world, in Europe where we stay, but also in India, your country, has been election, and also Brazil. So, and when we think about it, climate was on the agenda, sustainability was an agenda on this election, and of course with different and mixed results, we can say, but we are on a turning, really a turning point on the 2030, if you want, threshold that many of people have in mind when thinking about climate change and emissions and investment need to do by then.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. This was a big year in terms of elections and politics, global politics, as well as geopolitics. And sustainability definitely was a topic on probably each and every election. Uh, Now, whether the focus of newly elected governments on sustainability remains the same or not, I don't know. But as we look ahead, our focus remains clear. Next year, our effort will be to bring to you even more stories, insights, and actionable ideas, whether it is biodiversity implementation to emerging climate technologies, gathering people from business, academia, uh, or even from other walks of life. We will make all the efforts to bring you interesting conversations related to sustainability.
So to our listener, thank you for joining us on this journey. Your support and feedback keep us motivated and inspired. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I would like to wish all our listeners a very restful end of the year. Hopefully, you get some time to relax, enjoy this festive period. Merry Christmas if you're celebrating it, and in advance, Happy New Year. Keep pushing the sustainability agenda forward and look us up on LinkedIn and all major podcast platforms. Carmine, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Rishi, and talk soon in 2025.
Absolutely.